Okay. Hello everyone. So today's agenda. The agenda is REST and microservices. But before we delve into that, we need to know what is HTTP and what is web service. So first thing first, what is HTTP? And that in because we need to set the ground before we play in the ground, right? So that is the setup part in the left hand side. Now the second part comes is overview of REST, and just to give you a background, because my apprehension is, pardon me if my apprehensions are wrong, that if you are not familiar with REST, so I would be able to give you some overview on the REST, and then we deep dive, and then we see a sample case study that how do we REST it, and this is the one of from you has to ask me that whether it is uh, uh, technology agnostic. Yes, this session is technology agnostic, which means is it is not about any technology specific Java or .NET or Node or something. It is a conceptual session whereby you can implement by your own language, be it REST or something else. Okay, the last leg of it is overview of microservices, what is monoliths, and how monoliths has a, you know, can be overcome and can be re-architected in a microservice, and then a deep dive in a microservice, and then we take a sample case study. Correct? So this is the agenda. Great. So overview of HTTP. How many of you know what is HTTP and what is the full form of HTTP? Anyone can unmute and answer me. We always write HTTP colon slash slash google.com, but what is HTTP? Okay, never mind. I will tell you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's an application protocol,
Hypertext
hypertext
transfer protocol.
transfer protocol. Yeah.
Okay, my only humble request is that whenever you speak, because I cannot see the our everybody don't know you or I also can't see. Please speak your name and then answer. Yes, you are correct. It's a protocol. Correct, Devan. I think you're Devan, right?
Yes, 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 sir.
Yes. So Devan, you're right. It's a protocol, but it's called Hypertext Transfer Protocol. We heard about TCP, right? We heard about TCP. Now, TC on top of that, HTTP was built. And what is a protocol? So you also see a lot of times that, and in these sessions or in my sessions, I will always relate to human life or practical life. So if you go and talk to, let's say, our chief minister or our prime minister, you have to follow certain protocols. So what is a protocol? Protocol is nothing but a set of guidelines and rules. Like you are attending this session, you have certain protocol. You have to register in this link, and then you have to attend, and then you have to click this link and come on this link, and you have the ground rules, and then you have to, so this is a protocol. You have to abide by that to reach there. So kind of that we have said. We also see that there is a protocol called FTP, file transfer protocol. It means that the consumer who is consuming that protocol, or who is actually requesting that protocol, and who is receiving that protocol, both can talk in the same language. Suppose in this session there is someone called Shakshi. If she knows Bengali, and if I don't know Hindi, Bengali, I talk in Hindi, and if Shakshi doesn't know Hindi, then we cannot communicate. So we have to set a certain protocol that we talk to each other, which both understands in the similar way, and it's a kind of communication, right? If I say hello, you are saying hi, because you are understanding that I'm saying hello. But if I tell you bonjour, you won't be able to understand what is that, because that's a different language. Correct. So that is a protocol that when servers understand what client is asking for, and there is a certain guidelines and certain rules that you have to send something like this, and then I will respond to that. And the response is also understood by client. Any question? Good. So this is it, the architecture of HTTP. So we see it every time when we, every site, be it LinkedIn, be it Google, be it Facebook, we have a browser, we send a request and we get a response. And sometimes the internet is off, we get site cannot be reachable or something like that. So that is the protocol that you are sending a HTTP protocol, and it is received by a server, and server process it and then gets the response. I mean, gives the response to the client. So how to send this? There is a guideline. And what is that guideline? The guideline is there will be a HTTP header and there will be a HTTP body. And what is the HTTP body? The HTTP body is a HTML code. And what is the HTML code? Then you have to write HTML and then head and then body and blah 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 stuff. And this is what you need to learn. That you need to learn HTML so that you can make your own website. And these things are understood by the server or web server. There are two types of server: web server and application server. This session is not about server, so we can have a differentiation on web server, application servers or something. But this is it. I mean, this is understood that client is requesting that, and now I will respond to this, and the browser will flashily shows those green blue buttons, and there is a chat box, and then is a like button and all those things. So everything is written in HTML. So see, the request is understood by server, and the response which it is giving, which is HTML code, it is understood by browser. So both are in a handshaking mode, that both are understanding each other's language. So that is the architecture of HTTP in a nutshell. Okay. So, but whenever you, now these are the building blocks we need to understand. Why I'm keeping this session, because these are the building blocks you need to understand to go into the next ladder, which is REST. Now, whenever you ask for a web page, you would always get some response code. If it is good, if it is bad, if it is not reachable. Sometimes you might have seen that you get 403 or 404, file not found, something like that. So these are the W3C consortium, they have said that these are my codes. So we have 100 to 200, which are informational responses. 200 means successful responses. If you go to any browser, press F12, you will see in the right hand side there will be inspect button, and there is a networks. So whenever you say google.com, you will see that the network connections are going to Google server and coming back with a response, and the response code is 200. I can show you in the end of the session if you still have interest, because we have already 15 minutes late. So we have to be into the subject. But if anybody is interested, be with me, I will show you. 300 is redirect. Suppose you sometimes see that whenever you paste a link in LinkedIn, the link get transferred. I mean, say you pasted a YouTube link and it got transferred to a different link called LinkedIn dot whatever blah blah. So what happens is LinkedIn generates a link which redirects it to YouTube. So then they give 300 responses. Whenever you see LinkedIn that response, LinkedIn say, hey guy, you have requested this link, but this is not with me, it is in the YouTube. I am redirecting you to the YouTube. So in that case, you will see 3xx means 300 to 400 responses. And you can see this if you Google this response code, HTTP response codes in Google, you will find this. 400 responses are then when the client makes a mistake. You give google.com/Devayan Saha, you try it, and you see that you get a 400 response, because that file doesn't exist. So Devayan Saha is making a mistake here. So that's a client mistake, and that is why 400 responses are coming. But sometimes client doesn't do any mistake. The server has a problem. Maybe the database is down, or maybe the server is full with memory. Then the 500 responses are coming. It is a server error. So we need to understand these things very carefully. Okay. Next part we understand is the request methods. Whenever I request with a method that, so what do I want? How do I want? What do I want is a noun. Means I want my profile page, my account. That's a noun. But how do I want? I want to get that account. If I want to save my name again, I want to post that account. I want to update my name, I want to put that account. These are the things, these are the verbs. So think about this, that an English statement which has a noun, which has a verb, and which has a result. So you can form a sentence that I wanted my account, I wanted to get my account, and I got a response of 200. Means I wanted to get my account. Let me show my laser here. So I want to get my account. Account is a HTML file, which is a noun. I want to get my account, which is a verb, and I got a response of 200. So this is all about HTTP. In the overview, very top level. This is the overview. And who does that? All those things. Who serves this? I mean, I'm actually using that term. Who serves that? The server. Whoever is serving is a server. Clear? Any question from anyone? I mean, am I understandable, or I am becoming very Hebrew here? I think everybody has slept. Hello. Okay. Cool. I got a thumbs up from someone. Anyway, so yeah. So the next slide. Now, what is web service? We know now that what is HTTP. That what is web service? We know www is a web, World Wide Web. But what is a web service? Means in the last slide we have seen that we were asking for some content, right? The content was HTML or your web page, correct? But the web service, when it comes to web service, it is kind of a service you will get. So think about this. I go to Amazon and I buy a product, correct? I click on that and say that I need a, let's say, USB charger. They gave me this. So they are giving me a product. But if I go to Swiggy and say I want to have, let's say, biryani, they are not giving me the product. They are giving me the service to transfer that product. So there are two things. One is product and one is service. So web service is giving you a service, means a method. You are asking for something and they are providing it. Not they are producing it, but they are providing it. Correct? So if we go by the boring definition, it says a service offered by electronic device to another electronic device communicating each other via World Wide Web. A server running on computer device listening for requests at a particular port over networking, serving web documents like HTML, JSON, XML web images. This is the definition from Wikipedia. Means a service, what it does, it gives you a service to transfer some tangible thing to your client. Now, it can be HTML, it can be JSON, it can be XML, it can be images, it can be media, it can be video, anything like that. So that service is called web service. Correct? Now we have two kinds of web service. This is funny. Why did I put this picture? Like one is a live boy and someone is resting. So basically, this is a metaphor. So there are two types of service right now in this industry, or I would say not right now, I would say very popular in this industry. One is called SOAP and one is called REST, and that is why I put this picture. That one is called SOAP, one is called REST. Now let's go one by one. What is a SOAP? SOAP stands for Simple Object Access Protocol. Means it transfers an object and it's a protocol. Protocol, I already explained what is protocol. But SOAP REST on the other hand, it says representational state transfer. No? Representational state means you have a state, you are transferring that. Can you tell me a representational state transfer in a real life? Can anyone tell me? Unmute. I mean, you guys are very silent. You don't interact. Anybody? No? Okay. I will tell you.
Repeat the question.
Sorry? Yeah. My question is, can you explain representational state transfer in a real life? That you are transferring a state which represents you, or something rather. We often call. I'll explain. We often tell in chat, send me a selfie, right? In chat or in Facebook or something. So what does it represent? It's your state which transferring to the other person that this is how I am. I'm in the beach with a beer. That's your representation of your state right now. Correct? So this is an architectural pattern. REST doesn't need much bandwidth, whereas SOAP needs more bandwidth. SOAP only works with XML formats, whereas HTML and this works with any format. So if you go to any old banking application or something, they always talk on the REST. REST is very heavy, REST is very strict, REST is very, SOAP is very strict, SOAP is very heavy, they need more bandwidth. And then those has evolved over the time to REST, which is very lightweight, very fast. If you see the older websites, it's very slow. If you see right now also, few banks are very slow when you do net banking because they work on the SOAP API. But if you see in the Facebook, LinkedIn, Google or anything, they work on the REST and they are very fast because they are not very strict. So this is about web service. Any question? Please feel free to ask me because the road ahead is built on these two slides. No questions? Hey Abhishek, I see a question by you. What happens if we try to delete data using put request or any such mismatch? Uh, can you elaborate on the question, Abhishek, or you left? Okay, so we will move on. So now it's a rest time, correct? So we will now go and check what is rest. So as I said, how the rest is named is representational state transfer. It's called REST. It's a software architectural style consisting of guidelines and best practices for creating scalable web service. And this is again a boring definition, but I will explain. So see, this is our daily life thing. We have a Android mobile, someone has a app iOS mobile, we have a React application, Angular application, we have different browsers, but they all talk to same REST API. And this is the beauty of REST API, that it can talk to multiple vendor, multiple technologies, multiple channels, everything. It is not platform agnostic, OS agnostic, or technology agnostic. It is very open, that it can talk to anyone. And then it in turns talk to database to pull up the information. Suppose here somebody called Suparna is there. She is asking for her post in LinkedIn. So sometimes she is using Android phone, sometimes she is using Chrome, sometimes she is using Angular application or something, but she will get the same data because the same REST API means application programming interface. Correct? Means it's a service, REST service. So this is serving all of the things and so on and so forth. It can be Alexa, it can be Amazon TV, it can be Fire Stick, it can be anything. So these same application is serving all the things, and that is why the same data is being transferred and we can see the same data in different environments. Okay, now let's try to break that picture in a different section to make you understand what is what. So first I broke it down in 3 layers. So first layer is the clients. We often call it clients, we sometimes call it front end, we call ourselves front end developer, correct? Then API consumer, because sometimes call these are the API consumer, these are consuming the API. Then sometimes we call channel, these are different names. The second layer is web service, sometimes we call it this web service, this is backend, I am a backend developer, correct? I am an API provider, means this is providing the API, or simply call it API, and sometimes call it API server. Then comes the third layer, which is the most important layer, where we keep the data, our data, which is database. Sometimes we call it persistence, sometimes we call it storage. And when we say we are full stack, means we can work on all the layers. I can work with Angular, I can work with REST API, we can work with database everywhere. Okay, so what is it? This is the architecture of REST. This is how the REST works. Any question? Can you unmute yourself if you have a question, please? Because sometimes I am not following the chat. Any question from anyone? No? Okay. Now, Dr. Roy Fielding, not that I am also Roy, I am not that Dr. Roy, because Dr. Roy Fielding, who has done this REST architecture, he has some principles. So first principle is REST is a client server architecture. If I go back in this slide, this is our client and this is your server. So that's why Roy Fielding said this is a client-server architecture. The server both have a different set of concerns. Means one is consuming and one is serving the requests. Second, REST is a stateless. Means if you have given me the selfie, I don't know what is the next time you're doing. You might be, sea hawking or something like that, but I don't have that picture. You have given the selfie, that's the state I know. So that is stateless. Once you get the response, you don't know what is happening after that. Then REST provides a uniform interface between components. This simplifies the architecture as all components follow the same rules of speech. If you remember the last picture, we said that if you are talking from Android or from iOS or from anything, this gives a uniformity of the interface and the data from wherever you are calling. Okay. REST is a layered system. That means the client connecting to intermediate component like a proxy has no knowledge right. As I said in the link before slide, this client doesn't know if there is a database or something. These clients are only concerned about this server. They don't know what is beyond or what is layered under this service. So that is why it is said that this is a layered system. Okay. And there are other things which are very advanced, so I am not going to talk about that, but I am listing it down that REST is cacheable, REST is optionally provides code on demand, but these things we will know in the REST, advanced REST training or session. Yeah. Now let's define what is URL, Uniform Resource Locator. We type it in the web, right? Always. So we type it https mydomain.company.com, REST, order service, order line, order price, price equal to price. So let's break it down. What means what? So scheme means protocol. What is the protocol? Sometimes it's HTTPS, sometimes it's HTTP only. So that means one is secured, one is not secured. So that is your protocol. Next is a host. Which server you are being served from? That is a service which goes to the DNS and then resolves to IP. Correct? So that is the server. So the browser type this, and when you type this, the browser will know when to reach, how to reach HTTPS, and then what to reach. I mean, which exactly things to reach. So here it says location, means you are accessing order service. Let's say Swiggy order service. So they'll go to order service and create a resource called order line. Suppose you have ordered for biryani and chicken tikka masala. So there are two order lines. One is biryani and one is chicken tikka masala. And then you put an order and give you order ID, which is the path parameter, and then price. So this is how the grammar has been set so that the server will know what you are actually accessing. Like if you are writing a SQL query, you said select star from employee where employee ID equal to 123. So you are telling that database server that I need an employee where the employee ID is 1. Similarly, here from the browser, it is saying I need the order line and the ID is order ID and the price is something. Give me that order and it will give you an order. So this is how the REST works. Now, as I said before, like we have different verbs. This is actually the noun. Now the verb comes is you have a CRUD. CRUD means create, read, update, delete. This is what you gave to server, but you didn't tell the server that what you want to do. You want to create a order, you want to read a order, you want to update a order, or you want to delete a order. That you have to do it through verb, which is for To create, you need to use post. To read, you need to use get. To update, you need to use put with the same URL. The URL being same, but the verb is different. And the server will respond with a response code like 201. You remember 202xxx is success. So 201 is a success, 200 is a success, 200 is a success. Okay, I have deleted. Okay, I have updated. Okay, I have, here is your order, take this. Or okay, I have created this order. So this is a REST client or a consumer, and this is a REST server. So if you send this URL with a verb, the server will respond to you with a code and the data. Any question from anyone?
Sir,
Yeah.
sir, actually, if I set the status code around 400 to 500, the browser will stop. If I
Exactly.
if I am talking from the backend perspective,
Correct.
then sir, how can I keep the request cycle going? If I don't respond to every request with 200?
No, then you from the client end side, when you get 500, that means the server is doing something wrong. So then most of the time you will see the front end coding or the client coding is being done in such a way it can handle these codes like 1xx, 2xx, 3xx, and 5xx and 4xx. So they will say, okay, this server is something busy. Okay, the server is busy somewhere. We need to wait for some time, and we'll see sometimes that the server is busy. Please try again later, something like that. So that you
Okay,
have
sir.
to then you have to handle in your front end that server is not responding in a correct way or the way we desire. Okay, but if it is a 400, then that means the client is doing something wrong. Suppose you have a login screen, you gave username but you didn't give the password, or in a registration form you give a username but the password is not matching with their password policy. So that means it is not a server problem, it is a client problem. Then you have to you know give a error message to the user in the front end coding. Hey, you are doing something wrong, please abide by our password policy, because we cannot allow other than that. So that is how you need to program, and that is where you ask a very good question. I think you're Abhishek, right?
No, sir, I am Shomallo.
Okay, sorry. Please speak your name. I can see your screen. Anyways, so the point I want to make is that is why these response codes becomes very important. That whenever you ask for something, you get a response, and you first check the code, response code. Okay, 200, everything is fine, boss. Go ahead. If it is 300, okay, I didn't get this, I will try it again in a different location because it's with that. 400, the client, you must say to the client, boss, you're doing something wrong. 500, you can say that our server is busy, please try again sometime, or your network connection is down, or something like that. So there are different cases. If you search in Google, you will get you will you will get different codes like 501, 502, 503, 500. There are different codes for different errors, and you can translate that error to a user-friendly message so that the user can also understand. Did I answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Good question. Okay, so we'll now take a sample case study. Okay, that how do I rest it? We have a problem statement. I will read it out for you. The company Shopier, it's a fictitious company, wants an e-commerce service by which they will be able to manage their inventory, account, shipping, etc. The software should be accessible from Shopier app, Shopier website, Chrome extension, and other partners like Amazon, Flipkart, etc. Also important to note that they have few customers who are resellers, who once build their portal but showcase the trade the same products as Shopee. Also note that these applications are not written in same language, so the desired service should be capable of integrating with them. Let me explain this to you. So I got a project where the Shopee company, the e-commerce, they want to build a software where they have a website already, they have an app also, they have Chrome extension, they are also selling it to Amazon, Flipkart, eBay, and blah blah stuff. And also somebody called, let's say, somewhere here, who wants to build their own website but will sell the same product as Shopee does, but the branding will be there. How do I build it? If you have any question, if you have any idea. And these software like Shopee website may be done by Abhishek, the Shopee app is done by Shukwanna or somebody else. They have their own technology fascinations. So they are building some in .NET, some in Java, some in C, some in Python, something is that, and everybody would be doing that. So basically this is a classic case of REST. So now you go back and think that what are the things we need to consider. So let's highlight those things. In this sentence, we pick out few words which are actually meaningful to us. Web, mobile, online. These are the three things. We got to get that. What are the next? Different clients, different technologies, same data. We need to provide the same data. Correct? What's the next? They have different departments like accounts, inventory, shipping, and they have different partners like Flipkart, Amazon, or your own reseller. These are the very things we need to think about when you design or architect a application. So now we come up with this REST architecture. So here I have listed down the departments. It's account, inventory, shipping. And in account, you create account, read account, update account, delete account. This is the operation which we do in account. Inventory, all inventory that I keep a product, let's say I keep soap, I keep moisturizer, I keep something like that. We create the inventory, we update the inventory when something gets sold, we delete the inventory when everything is sold or we don't want to continue with that product. Similarly, we want to read that inventory when we want to show the in a shopping site. When you go to Amazon, you get flooded with products. Those are being read. Similarly, shipping. How do you shipping it? By Blue Dart, by Amazon, by Flipkart, by eCart, or something like that. So now we come up with the URLs, and now see my URLs. So, but I will just go to one and then you can read it in your own. So create that. Okay, shopio.com v1 rest an account, but I'm posting it, and post is to create. So the server will create an account. Now whenever you create an account, you will have an account ID. Let's assume this is 12344. If anybody is so now, if in the next time you go and you say that, hey, get my account, so you will do a get, but you have to provide the account ID. Otherwise, how the server will know that which account you are asking for? Correct? Similarly, these things are done in this way, and this is very important to construct those URLs. From the construction of that URL, the server would know, and with the word, the server would know that what actually you are looking for. and what do you want to do, what's your intention. Similarly, let's go to this part. I am highlighting this part. Concentrate on this part. Okay. Now here you see that it is not really simple. Here I am saying that account 1234 slash product slash and slash ship means from the account means I am a buyer. So my account is 12344. I want a product called 9988 and I want to ship it. So this is the relation. Just if you ask yourself, I want to ship something. What is the something? Who is asking for that? So these are the questions the server will ask you. So that is why you are providing, hey, I am 12344. I have a product called 9988. I want to ship that. So this is how you tell your client that account 12344 wants a product 99988 to ship it. It's kind of an English statement. Once you are conversant with that, you won't have any problem to understand this. Any questions so far? Stop. I don't know. Yes, Swaikar,
Yes,
please.
sir. I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Swaikar.
Sir, actually, I work with Django and I'm new to REST API with the Django REST framework. So my question is like, as we are passing the values with the particular, actually we are hitting the particular URL with whatever the data it is needed. But let's say I am a pen tester or ethical hacker. So I also pinging on that particular URL. So we can use some kind of authentication key on that particular URL slash ID, something like that. It is also like we can do that, na?
Yes. So, as this is a very overview session, this is not a full-fledged training. I didn't put the authentication part of it. So, yes, you're correct. So, basically, what happens is when
Actually, I
you
don't
log in.
know, but I'm asking that that it
Yes,
also
I
like
am.
can be done.
Yeah, I'm answering the question. So, basically, what happens is whenever you log in, you have a login always, right? So, when you
Yeah,
log in, the server gives you a token, and
yeah,
those
yes,
things
sir.
you can see in your either in the token is get saved in URL or in your header or in your cookies. Okay, so these tokens are nothing but your authentication token, and after that each time you hit that URL, that token is being passed by the browser or maybe the app. Now this token will be validated in the server. Okay, this Striker has already logged in and I gave him a token, and this token is not invalidated or not timed out. This token is still valid. I will now go ahead and execute this one for him. But let me see that whether Striker has access to this or this product. If not, they will give you 401 not authorized. If you type in Google what does 401 mean, this will give you not authorized. This is the client error. The client is giving wrong information. You are not supposed to get which are not authorized for you. I cannot I cannot go ahead and change your password in Facebook because I'm not authorized. So whenever I log into Facebook, I go and change my password. The server authenticates me, authorizes me that okay, you are entitled to change your password. But if I go to your screen and try to change your password, I cannot do that. Did I answer your question, Saikat?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Anyone has any more question? I'd be happy to help. No? Okay, fine. Good. So now we should build a microservice. So the cat has woken up and says that let's build a web service. Now what is a microservice now? So the principle of microservice is, suppose we build that last case study, right? We build that software, like the account and everything, all the stuff and everything. It's all in running in one server, very good, client appreciated, and you got your payments, very good. Now you are in the maintenance phase. Now what happened? Your account REST API has got some defect or some malfunction, a bug. You want to, your customer has said that, hey, you build that, there is a bug, you need to correct it. You said, okay, fine, I will build it, I will correct it, no problem. You corrected it, and then you go back to the customer and say, sir, I have corrected this, give me some time, I will restart the server. I will. The client said, no, you cannot. How can you restart a server? My customers are all waiting. Now my question is, have you seen Amazon is being down somewhere, or Facebook is down, or LinkedIn is down, and they are asking for, okay, we are correcting a bug, so please wait for some time, we will come back again. You never seen that. Why? Because this they needed microservice. Now, what are the principles of microservice? Why do we need a microservice? The principles will drive or let you know why do we a microservice? Why do we need a microservice? So the first thing is isolate failure. This is the first thing. That if you have a big application, if you have a big house in your, let's say you have a big house and they don't have any walls. It's a kind of banquet. There are a lot of fans, a lot of switches, a lot of lights, and all those things. Now, one light is like blinking; it's not working correctly, and you poor fellow go into that banquet and switch on every, you know, switch off every switch there, and try to figure out what is the light, where is that switch, and then you figure out whether it is a problem of the light or of the problem of the switch or of the problem of the cable. So by that time you figure out a lot of time has been spent. So that is where we isolate failure is one of the things. We build a REST service where account department is there, shipping is there, order is there, customer is there, blah blah is there. So all things we put in one service and say this is our application. Now if something is not working, we sometimes go into the account service, sometimes go to the, we try to figure out where is the problem. Next thing is highly observable. Means, suppose you, again I go back to this banquet. Suppose you see that, okay, fine, this is running good, everything is working fine, but my electricity is going up and up and up every month. So could be one fan is defective, one capacitor is not working, and that is why it is consuming a lot of power. So I cannot observe that. But if I put, if I had broken it down to different rooms and every room had their own submitters, I could have observed those. Okay, this is the room. The electric consumption is going up. So when you break it down, it becomes highly observable. Then the third principle, modeled around business domain. See, our example is actually, uh, you know, uh, the different business domain. So in this website or in this software, if I put somebody who is very good in accounting but may not be very good in shipping, he will be trembling. I mean, he will be suffering or stumbling with problems that, okay, account to मेरे को पता है, but I don't know about what is going on in shipping, and the vice versa is also true. One guy may be very good at shipping, but not in accounting. So if I tell you go ahead and code in shipping domain, he may not be very comfortable. So it is our duty to break it down in a domain wise, so that when we hire for somebody, or we get coders for somebody, so we will specifically say we want a Java developer who has proficiency in accounting or shipping or customer management. Correct? So that is why it is very useful to break it down. Culture of automation. Suppose we want to automate shipping. So we cannot automate the full system if it is together. So we want to automate only shipping, or we want to automate the order approval process, that such and such algorithm is there, we put a AI/ML, that when these things are there, it will be automatically approved. Nobody has to be there in the customer care center and say, okay, you're approved. So we need to build that on a specific area rather than the whole system. Hide implementation details. When we put everything together, everything is known to each other. The account, if we are building one application, account knows how it has been doing shipping. And there is a secrecy issue, there is a privacy issue in this. Not only that, there is a technical issue also there, that if you have started building in .NET, you have to build it in everything in .NET. Maybe the customer care is very good in Java. There are a lot of good products in customer care in Java. Or maybe the shipping is very good in Python or Django. But because we built one system or one application, we have to still do it with the .NET because we started with the .NET. So the implementations are not segregated when you build one system. In the last case, in our case study, correct? Decentralize all the things, yes. So we are decentralizing. Maybe my shipping department is in Bombay or Mumbai. My the order department is somewhere else. So we are decentralizing the servers also. It's not in one server. Maybe I am putting the servers which are verily accessed from Mumbai in Mumbai location, or maybe my overseas server overseas. All the orders are coming from Singapore, so I put my servers in the Singapore rather than putting it here, because then if I put it there, it will be fast. So we are decentralizing. Correct? The last point, deploy independently, which is kindly connected with this one, which is isolate failure. So suppose tomorrow we have a bug in the account system, the whole system is not down, only the account part is not working, because I have now different servers. For account, one service is there, for orders one service is there, for shipping one service is there. But if I have a bug in account, the other services are working perfectly. Or it's not about only fault. Maybe I am uh, I'll give you a classic example. In my last project, what happens is they were in shipping for Blue Dart, for eCart, and what is that other company, I forgot. So these three they are working with. But now they have told me that we also work with FedEx. So what we will do, this is the enhancement service we will do. So I didn't shut down their whole server. What I did is, for some time shipping site was down, I put the FedEx in and I bring it up again. So my end user, they are not bothered about how the shipping is done. They are still working with customer accounting, products, inventory. They are still seeing, like you are still surfing those products, because surfing products has no relation with the shipping. And that's why we could do deploy independently, and that is what microservice principles are. Now I come to the definition. It's very clear when I explain this. So now it will be easier for you. Microservice is a small unit that has only responsibility or single logic. If you think about your body is a microservice. If you think like this, your hands know how to feed in your mouth. Even your leg is cut while you're playing football or doing something. It doesn't affect your hand. The hand is still going into your mouth. So your hand is a microservice, your leg is a microservice. If your hand is cut, it will not stop you to work or job because your leg is perfectly fine. So they know their own responsibilities or own logic. Microservice or evolution of SOA means it's a service-oriented architecture. SOA means service-oriented architecture, but service-oriented architecture is a different paradigm, and they shifted it to microservice. We can talk about SOA some other day, but just for now, it's an evolution of SOA. There was certain problem in SOA which has been mitigated in microservices, and this is how the technology evolves. First monolith and then slowly like this. Microservices are small and independent services that can work together. That is very important. See, as I said, your human body is a microservice. So hand is there, leg is there, but they can also work together. And who controls that? Your mind. So in a Sunday you want to cut your nails, your fingernails. Who will do that? Your hand will talk to your leg and cut the nails of your finger, your foot finger. So they are both working together. They know their responsibilities. They are independent, but they are controlled. They are being controlled by your mind. So that is why it says microservice itself. Microservices are small, independent microservices that work together. Fourth point is microservice itself processes its own data or external data. I mean, each and every microservice keeps own data. If I go back to my example, the service we designed like accounts and the shipping, the accounts doesn't need to know what is the shipping data. It's just get a pointer that okay fine, my shipping will be done. Or the other way down, the shipping doesn't need to know what are the account details, what is the password of Devan Shah. The shipping doesn't need to know. Only thing he needs to know is the minimal part of it. What is the account number so that I can ship it. But it doesn't need to know what is his name, what is his age, what is his sex, what is his date of birth, what is his phone number. He doesn't need to know. They are keeping their own data. But while they need data, they can also collaborate. Microservices don't need to share the same technology stack, libraries, framework, even version. As I said, maybe accounts are built on Django and shipping is built on something else, and they are different technologies. Not only technologies, maybe shipping is done with Django 3.2 and order service is done in Django 3.1. They don't have any problem because they talk to each other by response. Now, here is a microservice. As I said, you have a big building. This is called monolith, where different things are there, and you are caretaker of this building. Someday something is not working. You have to go top to bottom, nook and corner to find out the problem. But if this service was built in a fragmented way, then you could have a pinpointed problem, observation and everything. Like your customer would say, shipping nahi ho raha hai, shipping is not working. So the customer will tell you, and you go to the shipping department, shipping web service and check it. What is in the logs? Correct? So I will not go into that. Later on, you can read this. But most of the thing is these are advantages of monolithic application and advantages. I will quickly highlight those part that too large data size in a monolithic. We need to redeploy the whole application as I already explained every line, but just to highlight those difficult for new developer when even if it's the responsibility is related to single functionality. As I explained that someone is for shipping, he may not be able to know accounting. Then it's a single part application facing large low traffic like maybe your product surfing normally in a shopping application. Product surfing is very traffic high, but the shipping is very traffic low. So if you put it in a server in a one application way, the whole application will serve lot of traffic, but you are wasting money because your shipping doesn't need that much traffic. So you can break it down and you identify, okay, my product service is very much traffic hunger site, so I put it in a very good server, but my shipping is very low because out of 1,000 maybe 10 are giving product order and big ship. So maybe this this shipping can be very less kind of server, which is not, if you build this in a big application, this is not possible, but if you do it in a separate application, it is. So these are the things. Technology, well, we have said this, single bus or any model, this is also. So these are the advantages which can be mitigated in microservice. So is it all about microservice that we break it down and we say we break a building in a small rooms and we say that this is a microservice? So is it a microservice? No. The answer is not really that. Microservice has lot of other features, which is coming from that microservice can handle different clients. It can restrict clients. It can throttle clients. I don't know if you know about throttling. Throttling means is, suppose I um, open a weather service. You have all worked with a weather service, correct? I see in the LinkedIn every day someone has written some app with a weather service. So if you have a weather service or maybe Google Map service, there is a service in Google or maybe weather.com where allows you to consume their API freely. So suppose Devan is consume that API and he has written his own app, Devan weather app. Similarly, Shakshi is also writing another app with the weather app. But there is a limitation. The free tier, you can get only 50 requests per day. But whether Shakshi has bought that API service with a credit card and she gets unlimited. So I can differentiate clients that this is my paid client, this is my non-paid client. I will give him 50, but I give her unlimited. So those things can be done through microservice API. Identity providers, you can provide identities like how they will be authenticated. The API token, I'm sure if you have heard about API token, this API ID, API token, sometimes they say we can say you can provide that. Next thing is API gateway, means there is a gateway which does all these things. See, microservice is a big subject, so I cannot talk in 1 hour, but I will touch upon what it is along with you. So API gateway is all the API are listed here. You go and register in API gateway. Like we have Amazon API gateway, we have GCP, Google Cloud Platform API gateway. You whenever you go to Google Map, you have to register. I don't know if you have used that. You have to register somewhere and you get an API token. So that is your API gateway. Where you go and register and you say, hey, I want to use your API. Can you give me a token? And with that token, you have to go to call their microservices. Messaging formats, you have different messaging. You can work with JSON, you can work with XML, you can work with anything. So same API, someone is calling with XML, someone is calling with JSON, and it is the microservice who will transform that internally. Then you have service discovery. These are very big subject. Service discovery is, let's say, weather. I have a service called weather, but I don't know where it belongs, which server it belongs, or from which server it is serving. So I can make a discovery with the name weather, and then I go to the redirected to the server. Because what happens is, if I will directly connect it to, let's say, Abhishek server, then if Abhishek server is down, then I have nowhere to go. But if I go to some broker, that's called broker, if I go to that person will ensure that from somewhere else the service will be served. Then there is API management, where the user ID and everything will be, and then the static content and the databases. These are all not very uh, new things to use. Now this is a sample architecture of a Uber. You know, everybody is using Uber, right? So this is their Uber microservice architecture, which I taken from their website. So they have web page also, they have computer desktop also, and then they have app also, they have their own customer care. So everybody is going through API gateway, and these are their microservices. One is passenger management, billing, passenger web UI, driver management, payments, driver web UI, trip management, notification. Now these microservices all are registered in API gateway, and they are talking to each other every time. You don't know, as I said, microservice is a layered architecture. You don't know what is happening beyond. You only know that you are accessing an app. This app only knows that it has to access the API gateway. That's it, finish. Whatever happens in between, you don't know. Suppose this notification is having some problem, other servers are working properly. Maybe you get it, but you'll get it. It's not in the essence of it, right? Any question?
So I also want to know that what are the like cons and flaws in the REST API?
Sir,
REST
I have
API,
another question.
I'll answer that and then I'll come to you. So as I said, the REST API is there are cons as such. No cons are there if you build it in a true correct way. The true correct way is there are some maturity. You can search with Richardson maturity model (RMM). There is somebody called Richardson. He has given some maturity model of REST. If you can follow that, then your REST is good. But there are alternate to REST also, like GraphQL service from Facebook. They have come up with an alternate, and they have their own pros and cons, and REST is also on pros and cons. But as long as both, see, everything depends on architecture. If I tell you, is the potato good for health, isn't it an abstract statement? Unless you know the context, you don't know. If you are diabetic, potato is bad for health. If you are very thin, lean, if you don't have diabetic, then potato is good for you. So everything is, nothing is good or nothing is bad. It depends on the context of the problem. So if you architect it good, design it good in the correct context, then REST is also good and REST can be also bad. But Only point is you don't build it big so that it's hard to maintain, and that is why the microservices came into the picture. But it is build it small and keep it very simple. We call it in our industry, we call it KISS theory, KISSS theory, which means keep it short, simple, and sweet. Okay, so these, if you build a small component which can very much observable, very much maintainable, very much lightweight, very much extendable, very much sustainable, then whatever way you build it, it's good. Okay, you have somebody else will said. Then did I answer your question, Somelio? Who asked you?
So actually, it was my question. Yeah, I got the answer.
Okay, somebody else was asking some question.
Yes, sir. I am Shomalla. I was just asking, sir. Sir, if I build many small servers, will it not be hectic to maintain so many servers and keep them updated? Sir, consider if I have the Linux servers only, then sir, I have to continuously keep them updated, and this will be too much hectic, and it will shoot up my hosting cost. When I put it to the cloud, I have to make so many containers and maintain so many configurations and all.
Correct. Good question. Again, it depends on the context. If I ask you back, what is the thing you are building? Are you building a calculator program?
Sir, in a calculator program, I don't think I am not going to go in a microservice way. The monolith is much better.
Correct. So now the next question, what are you building? And this depends on many things. It depends on the capacity of your users. It depends on your user base. It depends on your volume. So if you break it down to a different system, you will actually gain it, not lose it. Depends on, again, I have a quote unquote thing. Depends on what you are building. If you are building a shopping site, or if you are building a, let's say, uh, I don't know, like Uber or something, or maybe Swiggy, it actually benefits you, because as I said, that not every part of our application is, in use for every time.
Then sir,
And
consider a scenario. If I am building a large application, how can I maintain so many servers in a simple way?
So I think in that condition, like whenever we don't have to configure every time, we can go serverless because all the things can be configured right there. And
no,
in big,
no,
hello.
the question he asked is, if he, how can he maintain so many servers? So then you come into a different topic called DevOps. Correct?
Okay,
Nowadays,
sir. Sorry
nobody,
for that.
nobody, yeah, sorry.
Yes,
Hello.
sir. I was actually answering, like I was trying to answer this question. The time we call DevOps, actually most of the big website use CI/CD now that time.
Yes,
So
yes.
it's not
Basically,
problematic for them because
yes.
it's all maintained.
Correct. So basically what you do is you have different servers, then you are talking about not only you but you as a team. And every team has different department and everybody is working their product. So for them, if you go back and we look at the problem, so every team has to maintain their own small application. So they are very happy to maintain that application because they are not building very big size. They are, if you are from shipping department, you are just, your world is just shipping. You don't know, you don't care about what is being done in account department. And they build it through CI/CD pipelines, DevOps, and all those things. Those are being deployed. Correct. So again,
Okay, sir.
the size of it will explain or will tell you that this is, I mean, surely tomorrow if you are building your own site which gives service to your maybe uh, para or mohalla, then you will not go for a microservice. But when you grow, the question will arise: how can we grow and go to the next ladder? How can I grow? And that is the point. You will realize that I have to delegate or segregate my responsibilities to different things. And now you are talking about microservice. I'll give you an
Then sir,
example.
the whole point is that when I have to scale, when the scalability matters, then I have to switch from monolith to microservices.
Exactly. I mean, you cannot scale without microservice. If you are forcefully scaling without microservice, then you are losing money, losing time, losing effort, losing clientele, losing customer base. I'll tell you a simple example in my neighborhood. There was a guy who started a pawn shop. He alone used to maintain that pawn shop. Now he has grown into grocery, he has gone into sweet shop and everything. And now he kept 4 or 5 guys. Not only that, he has opened 3 other shops in 3 regions. I mean, not 3 areas, not this area, but different areas. So if he had a mindset that I will do everything, I will control 3 things, I will also sell sweet at the same time and also cigarette at the same time, he won't be able to grow. So he has to
Okay, sir,
delegate.
understood.
Yeah. So that is how you grow. Okay. Now I come to the next slide. Now I recap the problem statement which we done for REST, and same thing. Now we broke it down. Now you see the same thing. Our URLs will be same. The URLs will be exposed here. Let me use my laser again. The URLs will be again here. But internally, whenever you see accounts / accounts, if you remember the URLs / accounts, so then accounts will go to accounts department, account REST API. If you go git by ship, then go to the shipping, then get the inventory, and they also talk to each other, and they have their own database. So see, the same problem can be solved in different ways. But now what we gain? We gain a lot of things which we discussed in the principal section, right? These are all the things we gained, which we were not having in the rest. Correct. So this is it.